The Neglected Senses, from For the Benefit of Those Who See, by Rosemary Mahoney, memoir. Background. Due to a punishing climate and lack of medical care, Tibet has an unusually high population of blind people. 30,000 of the 2.5 million Tibetans are either completely blind or significantly sight impaired. Beginning in the 1990s, Braille Without Borders, a charitable organization founded by Sabriya Tenberken and Paul Cronenberg in Lhasa, Tibet, has opened schools to help blind Tibetans integrate into society and gain valuable skills. About the author. Rosemary Mahoney, born 1961, is a citizen of both Ireland and the United States. Her writing has appeared in the Wall Street Journal, National Geographic Traveler, The London Observer, and many other publications. Regarding her book, For the Benefit of Those Who See, Entertainment Weekly writes that it is as if Mahoney had turned on the lights in a dark room, revealing how the world appears to those who experience it with their other four senses. The Neglected Senses, from For the Benefit of Those Who See, by Rosemary Mahoney. At Braille Without Borders, you learn quickly not to stand idly in doorways or on staircases or in narrow hallways, for the consequence is that eventually somebody blind will slam into you. In settings familiar to the blind, the unobstructed navigability of transitional passageways is something they quite reasonably take for granted. A doorway exists solely to be passed through, a staircase solely to be ascended or descended, a hallway solely to be traversed on the way from one room to another. Unable to see that a 200-pound man is sitting in the middle of a staircase, a pack of blind students will most likely fail to anticipate his anomalous presence and fall headlong over him as they attempt to skip down the stairs. The students at BWB race around their school, sprinting down the hallways, turning corners crisply at 5 miles per hour, skirting tables and chairs, opening doors without groping for the knobs, reaching for objects on shelves with surprising precision. They kick soccer balls, rearrange furniture, zip their own zippers, throw things and catch things. Yes, sometimes they miss the catch and the things end up hitting them in the face. Fill their own soup bowls, go for walks downtown alone, make purchases without getting shortchanged. They know their realm so well that after a few days at the school, I began to forget that they were blind, and would not have been entirely surprised to find a blind child successfully juggling 3 apples or using the banister as a balance beam. I realized that those who had some vision actually moved more hesitantly than those who were completely blind. The slightly sighted, still depending on their weakened eyes, had to take time to make out what they were seeing, to locate a doorknob, for example, and sometimes they thought they could see where they were going, but miscalculated and ended up crashing into tables or posts. Also, those who could see a bit were more distractible than those who couldn't see at all, and they occasionally tried to read their braille with whatever sight they had left, holding the embossed pages an inch from their eyes, a habit that Paul and Sabriya adamantly discouraged, because it taxes whatever vision remains, and because it is much less efficient than tactile reading. I was surprised by the ease and harmony the blind students had with their physical realm, and was eager enough to understand it, that at Sabriya's suggestion I agreed to let myself be blindfolded and led through the streets of Lhasa by 2 blind teenage girls, Chodin and Young Chin. The girls and I set off from the school, and as soon as we crossed the big boulevard, Qingdol Donglu, I took a blindfold out of my pocket. Young Chin and Chodin stood on either side of me, waiting expectantly, holding their white canes before them, clearly amused by the challenge. Young Chin, a shy, round-faced, cross-eyed 16-year-old with her hair in a ponytail, was completely blind in one eye, and saw only faint impressions of light with the other. She wore a baseball cap, clodhopper boots, a plaid flannel shirt buttoned up to the throat, denim trousers, and a jean jacket. Young Chin's perpetually crossed eyes gave her the appearance of slapstick confusion. I came to learn, however, that young Chin was a level-headed, sober, practical girl and possessed of considerable poise. Choden, a year younger than young Chin, was pink-cheeked and ever smiling. She too wore a ponytail, plaid flannel shirt, denim jacket and pants, baseball cap, and hiking boots. Side by side in their rough and ready attire, the girls brought to mind a pair of lumberjacks, ready to chop their way through a forest. Choden's eyes were pinched shut most of the time, but her left eye occasionally opened and seemed to range around in its orbit, taking in some light and color. The girls' blindness, their white canes, and my foreign presence with them had drawn a group of onlookers on the city sidewalk. As I pulled the blindfold over my eyes, I said to the girls, "We have a lot of people looking at us." Excited and embarrassed, they hooted, "Phew!" into their fingertips. And, I added, one of the people looking at us is a tall Chinese policeman with a gun. To that dire piece of information, they responded with a moment of shocked silence, and then they lowered their heads and muttered gravely, "Cha." "But," I said, "never mind the people. I have put the blindfold on and cannot see them anymore. I am now putting my sunglasses on over the blindfold so that I can see even less." "Good," Yang Chen said. "Now you are blind?" My eyes were sufficiently bound that I could see nothing at all. No light, no forms, nothing. The bright and varied colors of the buildings of Lhasa had disappeared, and I was presented with nothing but the backs of my own eyelids, onto which my heartbeat was projected in rhythmic flashes of orange. In the high altitude and resultant low atmospheric pressure of Lhasa, I was often aware that my heart was struggling to do its job. Nowhere else in the world had I been so conscious of my own pulse. At night, when I lay in bed, my heart pounded in my chest, ears, and eyes, and I felt short of breath to the point that I slept with my mouth open, and occasionally woke up feeling that I might actually be suffocating, whereupon I had to get up and walk around my enormous hotel room. Sometimes I even had to stand by an open window and inhale deeply, which only gave me the comforting illusion that I was getting more air, when of course the reality was that the atmospheric pressure outside the room was exactly the same as it was inside it, until the suffocating feeling passed. "I can't see a thing, I assure you," I said. "Now listen, girls, you won't let me get lost in Lhasa, will you? You know I don't speak Tibetan." With a hint of gloating pleasure, Choden said, "Yeah, we know it." Then she took my hand and thrust her white cane into it. "Oh, am I taking a cane too?" Yang Chen, the older of the two, interjected nervously. "Cane? Well, no. Maybe no cane. Choden must have her own cane. Otherwise she can lose her road." I passed the cane clumsily back to Choden. "Take your cane, Choden. God forbid you should lose your road while you're leading me." The girls positioned themselves on either side of me, hooked their arms through mine, and we headed up the street. Immediately I had the sensation that the ground beneath my feet was tilting. Sound seemed to become louder, smells became stronger, and the breeze on my face felt more forceful and distracting. I tripped on a raised lip of pavement, and the girls quickly tightened their grip on my elbows to keep me from falling. The dragging, clicking of one of the canes on the pavement sounded for all the world like the jittering ball in a spinning roulette wheel. I asked Choden if it was her cane that was making all that noise. Yeah, very nizzy is my cane. Compelled to imitate the gravelly sound of her cane, Choden said with relish, Czar. Sensing that I was nervous, Yang Chen said, Rose, how you are feeling? Well, I'm not really afraid, I said, but I feel as though I'm in a boat that's moving. You know that feeling when you're in a boat and the water is moving beneath you and you're a little bit unsteady on your feet? Oh yeah, I know it. Funny, Choden said. You are a little bit nervous. Is that right, Rose? I confessed that I was indeed a little bit nervous. This seemed to please Choden. Oh ha, she said, audibly smiling. Have you ever been in a boat? I asked her. No, I never. Well, then how can you say you know how it feels? Oh ha, you are right. Tell me, girls, how do you feel? Does the ground feel steady to you? Yeah, Yang Chen said. It's always steady, no problem. And now we must turn left. How do you know that? Because the sound of many televisions. Until Yang Chen mentioned it, I had not noticed the sound of many televisions. I had vaguely heard some background noise beyond us, an insignificant presence at the periphery of my attention, but distracted by my nervousness, I had not identified it. Now, focusing on it, I realized that the sound of many televisions was quite loud, riotous, in fact. It was that unmistakably tinny television sound, a counterfeit, thinner version of first-hand sound. What I was hearing was the many times multiplied voices of two people having a tense dialogue in Chinese. They spoke with the razor-sharp accent of Beijing. And then I heard rapid gunfire, filtered and squeezed through the many televisions. The gunfire sounded feeble and fake, like plastic pop guns in a penny arcade. I was disturbed that I hadn't noticed these sounds from a distance. That is men always selling televisions in a shop, Yang Chen said. Sometimes it is war films. When we hear the televisions, we know we must turn left. It was a matter of familiarity then, a recognizable constant in the girl's journey into the city. We carried on at an alarmingly brisk pace. I expected at any moment to crack my forehead on a lamppost or go plummeting into an open manhole. I felt terribly vulnerable and had to fight the impulse to lift the blindfold off my face. As I walked, I realized that I was holding my chin much higher in the air than I normally would, the way I do when I'm swimming and trying to keep my head dry. And each step I took had the same quality of awkward anticipation as those last few exploratory, drop-footed steps taken toward the bottom of a staircase one is descending in the pitch dark. I couldn't help lifting my hands in front of me in self-defense, like a pathetic caricature of a blind person. Linked at the elbows with the two girls, I found it difficult to lift my hands. Nevertheless, I kept trying to lift them, and Yang Chen kept gently pressing them down to show me I had nothing to fear. I shouldn't lift my hands, Yang Chen, I said. Maybe it is better to trust, Yang Chen said. She was much too patient and polite a girl to just come out and say, no, you shouldn't. Girls, I said, I wouldn't be able to do this alone. You would be afraid? Choden said. I would be very afraid. Oh ha, Choden said. Do not be afraid, Yang Chen said. We are watching you. All the blind students spoke this way. We are watching you. Nice to see you. See you again. Please let me see that book. For them, the vocabulary of vision was metaphorical, a symbolic representation of human connection, interest, and concern. The girls coaxed me forward with their slender arms, never breaking their stride. I heard passing voices speaking Tibetan and Chinese, the sound of a small spluttering engine, like that of a generator or an idling motorbike, the distant shrieks of children, a horn that sounded like a loud fart, something metallic scraping briefly on the pavement behind us, someone sneezing richly nearby, and all the while Choden's noisy cane rattling along in front of us, like a yapping little dog leading the way. Young Chen had a habit of humming as she walked. Each time she spoke, she had to interrupt her own humming, putting it on hold until there was silence between us again, whereupon she would resume the tune approximately where she had left off. I asked the girls how long they had been blind. Both said from a very young age. I asked them what they had been doing before they came to Braille Without Borders in Lhasa. Yang Chen said, I was only at home, just praying something and helping my mother. Choden said, I'm too home, praying and helping. Were there any other blind kids where you lived? My country don't have blind kids, Choden said. Only me. Not my country either, Yang Chen said. I knew that what they meant by my country were the villages they had come from, small mountain hamlets with mud brick houses, muttering flocks of chickens, some goats, shaggy yaks with matted hair, and little else but the biggest sky in the world, an all-engulfing sunlight, and a distant backdrop of seriously jagged snow-capped mountains. Yang Chen informed me out of the blue that her father died when she was young, and that her mother was, at present, dying. I was so taken aback that I couldn't bring myself to ask what her mother was dying of. Prompted by the mention of parents, Choden said, My mother was pregnant with me, and a cow kicked her in the stomach one time, and so that is why I got blind. I thought about the physics of this. Are you sure that's why you're blind, Choden? I said. Yeah, sure, she said cheerfully, and she gave my arm a little squeeze, as if to assure me that it really was quite all right to have the future of your eyesight mystically predetermined by a wayward, mud-encrusted cow's hoof, even before you were born. Like most Tibetans, the blind students were deeply conscious of reincarnation and karmic retribution. The widespread Tibetan impulse to go to the temple and pray was not just an effort to achieve a higher spirituality, but also a warding off of the malign and omnipresent supernatural forces believed to be pressing upon each individual's life and destiny. I asked the girls if they still prayed now that they were in Lhasa. Yes, every morning at 7 they went to the temple to pray. What exactly were they praying for? For the goodness, they said, and good things, and to make up for sins. What kind of sins? There was a silence while they thought about this. Sometimes we broke some things at school, Choden said. What things? Everything's. Braille machines and desks and windows, Yang Chen interjected. Because we cannot see and we make an accident sometimes. I pointed out that these were not sins, but forgivable mistakes. They thought about it, then agreed with me. A long silence followed while they searched their souls for real and purposive sins. I knew that the silence was due not to their reluctance to tell me their sins, but to their inability to find anything really worthy to confess. Okay, I said. Never mind the sins. And anyway, now we go right, Yang Chen said, gently steering me with her arm. How do you know that? You feel the ground got different here under your feet? I had felt nothing. But now that Yang Chen had brought it to my attention, I realized that the ground we were walking on was very uneven. When I told the girls that I had felt nothing different, that the ground had seemed to me to be always uneven, they stopped, turned me around, and took me back to the start of the street. Rose, now we show you. You must go and feel the street here. Yang Chen tapped my shin firmly with her cane to indicate that I should try the street out with my foot. The gesture was surprisingly authoritative. It was also intimate, in the way the gestures of a good teacher often are. You feel how it feels. I smeared the soles of my shoes around. It feels smooth, like concrete pavement. Yeah, smooth. Now come and you walk. We walked 10 paces on the smooth pavement, and then, very abruptly, the pavement changed and became something like cobblestone or roughly hewn brick. The first time around, I hadn't registered the change, which astonished me because the contrast was in fact sudden and marked. I had simply not been paying attention to what was under my feet. Why would I? When one is in the habit of anticipating the path ahead by sight, one rarely makes conscious note of, or even actually feels in any lasting way the texture of that path. When we feel the ground coming different under our feet, we know where we find ourselves, Yang Chen said. Do you know when a person is walking close to you? Yes, because we can hear them, and also sometimes can smell them, and also our cane can describe to us whatever is near us. I told the girls their English was quite good, and asked them if they were continuing to study the language. Yeah, now we are learning how to speak in a restaurant, Yang Chen said. I wasn't sure what she meant by that. By way of explanation, Choden said, in the tone of an extremely nervous, extremely unctuous waitress, Hello, madam. You are so very welcome. Good evening. Can I help you, please? What would you like to please eat? In the voice of a customer who had memorized the entire menu and was bored stiff by it, Yang Chen responded, Yes, please. I would like to have please one yak steak. Oh, very fine, Choden said. Please, how would you like your yak steak to be cooked? I would like to have my yak steak to be cooked medium rare, please. What would you please like to drink, please? Would you like to drink some of coffee? Please, Yang Chen said. I would like a bottle of white wind. Yang Chen, I said. WIND spells wind. A bottle of white wind would be something very rare, if not completely impossible. Yang Chen stopped in her tracks and positively guffawed at her mistake. Oh, ha ha ha! No, please, a bottle of white wine, please, I mean. I told the girls that it was not necessary for them to use the word please every time they open their mouths in a restaurant. No? No, once or twice is really enough. Otherwise, you will become quite annoying. What does it mean, annoying? Yang Chen asked. I explained that being annoying meant that soon enough, the person you were serving in the restaurant would have a strong desire to slap you. Immediately they understood. True to Tibetan form, the girls did not let the word annoying go by without asking me how to spell it. We walked on, listening to the sounds passing by, hammering, a squeaky wheel, birds chittering, voices speaking in Chinese and Tibetan, a horn being blown. And suddenly at my right shoulder, Yang Chen interrupted her humming to ask me, Rose, what is your hobby? This question always surprises me and makes me uneasy, perhaps because I never have a plausible-sounding answer to the question. If a hobby is something one pursues purely for pleasure, then reading the Greek-English dictionary and another excellent book called 600 Modern Greek Verbs, fully conjugated in all the tenses, is my hobby. I can become engrossed in those books so deeply, one word leading to another, that I fail to notice an entire hour passing. But how to explain this in an offhand way to a person you don't know well? As a hobby, It sounds not only pointless and dull, but pretentious and pedantic as well. I have no desire to explain it. Anything I could truly claim as a hobby, I am always reluctant to reveal. And the very concept of the hobby strikes me as too parochial, too specific, by definition, too distinctly separate from life's main activities. I told Young Chin that in general I liked rowing a boat, riding a bicycle, and making things out of wood. All the activities I liked that seemed to need no explanation or defense. Young Chin said, I like sing a song and learn some song, and I also like rotten. Rotten? What's that? Rotten. Rotten. Can you spell the word for me? I cannot. Choden tried to spell it for her. Rot. R-O-T. R-O-T-E-N. Well, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure what you mean by it, I said. Rotten is an adjective. It cannot be a hobby. Tch, I am wrong. Young Chin tittered and laid the side of her face against my upper arm, half in embarrassment and half in apology. I felt a soft breeze on my cheek. Now it's a little windy, I said. Windy, yeah. How come all of a sudden? I guessed the answer. Are we out of the closed street and in an open place? You are right, Young Chin said. We are in open, and it is wind, and there is a cloud. How do you know there's a cloud? I do not feel the sun on my nose. I didn't notice that, I said. Oh, ha, Choden said. By now I had learned that this was Choden's default response. When she didn't know what to say but wanted to maintain active participation in the conversation, she said encouragingly, Oh, ha. I heard the sound of water splashing, like a hose or a downspout pouring onto a pavement. Where is that splashing water coming from? I said. Not water, Yang Chin said. That noise is frying of dumplings. Here is a small restaurant in the street. Before long, I heard the crashing sound of thunder. No, Choden said. Not thunder. That is only the door of the marketplace. They are closing it. It makes a big noise. The closing door sounded so much like thunder that I wanted to pull off my blindfold and look around to be sure that Choden wasn't tricking me. I asked Choden if she was sure it wasn't thunder. Yeah, Rose, sure, don't worry. Now I smell gasoline, I said. No, that is shoes smell. What? Shoes smell. Hongo. The two girls conferred in Tibetan, trying to figure out how to explain to me what I was smelling. It is the smell of shoes. They are selling the shoes here in the street. I heard birdsong coming from somewhere behind us, a clear wandering whistle like that of a robin. I remarked on it, and Choden said, No, it is not a bird. It is... She said something to Yang Chin in Tibetan, looking again for a word. Alarm. It is the alarm for a car in case a person tries to steal it. They knew everything about their city. They knew what everything was, and where it was, and how it sounded and smelled and felt. They knew it by heart, and with their eyes closed. It seemed to me that they knew the city every bit as well as its sighted residents. And I was beginning to wonder whether I, too, couldn't benefit from knowing my environment from this different perspective. Now the cloud went, and the sun came shining, Yang Chin said. And as soon as she said it, I felt the sun on my head. Now we turn left, Choden said. How do you know we turn left? We smell the incense. That smells very nice. It means we are nearly in Jokhang Temple. The moment Choden mentioned it, the air was full of the smell of incense. Again, I hadn't noticed it until she alerted me to it. The girls were always one step ahead of me, maybe two. I had detected very little of what was taking place around me on this walk, perhaps because I was nervous and disoriented, but also because I was so used to navigating with my eyes that my other senses, relative to the senses of the blind girls, were atrophied. I stumbled along uncomfortably, feeling out of control and disliking that I was so slow in grasping and noticing what they noticed. Sight is a slick and overbearing autocrat, trumpeting its prodigal knowledge and perceptions so forcefully that it drowns out the other, subtler senses. We go through our days semi-oblivious to a whole range of sensory information because we are distracted and enslaved by our eyes. Taste, touch, smell, and hearing can hardly get a word in edgewise to the brain. Those of us who have sight do not realize that our experience of life and the world is overpowered by our vision. In this sense, we too are handicapped. I began to envy Choden's and Yang Chen's skills a little. In their presence, I saw that I had been missing a great deal of what was happening in my daily life, and I realized that it was not the blind person's deficiency that was drawing me into this subject, but the revelation of my own.